This edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose is sponsored by Accenture Federal Services. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, the Defense Department's move to the cloud goes into overdrive. Ryan McArthur of DISA explains a three-step plan to technology hyperconvergence and the Zero Trust path for Homeland Security. The DHS CISO Ken Bible is here. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. The Defense Department and the intelligence community will share classified cloud capacity, according to a new memo of agreement. Federal News Network reports that service will be part of the Joint Warfighting Cloud capability. Ryan McArthur is Program Manager for the JWCC at the Defense Information Systems Agency. Ryan, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Your colleagues, General Skinner and John Sherman, were on the program not long ago talking about the task orders that JWCC has against it. Now, tell me where they stand and where you're moving forward.
Hi, Francis. Thanks for having me. So today we have awarded 11 cloud task orders for JWCC with a total of $40 million in cloud spend over the life cycle. We have about another 11 pending task orders that are going to be coming out in the next 60 to 90 days. And then we have another 31 acquisition packages that are going to be pending that are working through the process with the Department of Defense. We're also working through pretty specifically with other contracting groups outside of DITCO that have been pretty successful as well. So things have been moving along over the last 4 months. Our first contracting task order went through in March. So to have 11 task orders awarded in the last 5 months, you know, things are starting to speed up, which has been pretty awesome to see. What
are some of the organizations that are putting those task orders in, and what's the nature of some of the compute that organizations will be doing?
So up front, we've had DISA, obviously, that's come up front, but we've had JCSC was one of ours. Marine Corps McCog has come in. Those are our first major task orders that have come in. Some of the other ones that are starting to really dive in have been publicly announced. Transcom is first major COCOM that's driving really hard towards putting their task order in. They're going to be they've actually got a task order that's working through the process. The chief data officer is got several task orders that are working through the process right now, and then OIG is also working through the process as well. We have other groups like from the intelligence community that are going to be working through that are on the Title X side. That are going to be working through the process with JWCC.
Do you expect the trajectory to be exponential? It sounds like the growth so far has been exponential. Do you expect to see that continue, or do you think there'll be a plateau at some point?
I think that the department, outside the intelligence community, I think the department has had several of the cloud offices. Like if you look at where the MILDEPs are, they've had very specific solutions that are for each of the services. But we haven't had an enterprise vehicle for the department to move out on. JWCC is that first enterprise vehicle. We awarded that vehicle in December. We had launched the vehicle in January, and we were very cautious about how we launched everything. We didn't just go full bore up front. So with that, trying to bring everybody on in a very meticulous manner, I think that success has breeded what we've put in place. So by doing that, I think that it's shown just overall.
The DISA Acquisition Package Preparation System, Dapps, is a pilot project that you're... Who came up with that, first of all? You don't have to answer that question, by the way. But Dapps, what is it, and what are you trying to learn through this pilot program?
Yeah, so Dapps, ultimately, if you look at the acquisition process, it's always paper, right? It's always like it's an arduous, long acquisition process. Everything we talk about in the public, it's always some long acquisition process. Even JWCC, you know, normally a normal acquisition process is 36 months for a program as large as JWCC. We tried to streamline that. JWCC was done in 17 months. What we try to do with Dapps is streamline the task order process. It doesn't streamline the specific selection process. That's the normal acquisition process. But what we wanted to do was build a front-end process that would make the building of the package faster. So what we did was we built a front-end application that would basically spit out a package at the end of it. So instead of you writing out every single thing that you're doing, what you're doing is it's intuitive. It's asking you questions as you're going through. So it's building the package, asking you questions as you're going through, and at the end of it, it spits out all the documents that you need that are required to have a task order at the end. So for DICO, if you're working with the DICO office, it gives you a 100% package. If you need to go to the Army, the Air Force, DCSA, and intelligence community, it gives you about a 90% solution. With that, what we've already seen, normal acquisitions, you could say would be longer, 90 days or more. Our DICO office has been averaging for our task orders less than 35 days for an acquisition to go through from a task order perspective.
Do you expect to see that continue to grow in a way that, you said in some other organizations it's a 90% solution. Do you expect to see that potentially change in the future as you get results back from Dapps and see how it works?
Well, so a lot of it's very iterative. I have a development team within the program that's actually working on Dapps consistently. DICO right now has been the team that's consistently feeding that. We just now recently had 2 packages go to 2 other contracting offices. I won't call those 2 contracting offices out, but what I expect is once those 2 contracting offices actually go through the process and work through how that package was for them, what I would want is for them to provide us feedback of how well that package actually worked for them. And then what we would do is we would try to see what we could do to the template that basically comes out of that and how well it worked for them, and see if we can streamline it any better. But what we've done with Dapps is go try to look at it from a software development perspective, and the team does it every 2 weeks. They revamp it. They take in feedback and then they try to iterate on it.
It seems to me there are a lot of people that are going to be jealous watching this hearing, cutting 2/3 of the process, the timeline out of the acquisition process.
Well, so I mean, we don't hold anything in.
Sure.
So even our partners in the IC community, we're learning from each other. So like we've built a partnership with the IC community, and we're consistently learning from each other all the time. We even with our joint use setup that we've set up with the C2E office, what we've been able to do is start to share some of our lessons learned. So our Dapps product, obviously they haven't asked to come use that, but they're looking at what we're building and seeing how we can share that type of technology and do lessons learned. But Dapps itself has been very successful so far from what we've seen from it.
When General Skinner was on Fed Gov Today the first time back at TechNet Cyber, he listed posture, position, and partnerships as his priorities. How do those 3 priorities intersect with the work that you're doing specifically on JWCC, Ryan?
So I think for posture, specifically JWCC is posturing the department from an education and training perspective. We're trying to posture the department to learn not just about cloud, but learn about requirements. If you understand the requirements you need to bring in from a cloud perspective and understand what you how to build the packages, it speeds up the process that and it also arms you for which CSP works best or what capabilities work best. So that way you're building what you need, not just going out and getting cloud. So posture is important. From a position perspective, JWCC positions the department to really try to make cloud simple. That's the motto for my office, is to make cloud simple. But how we do that is JWCC is the first contract to really have a direct relationship with the CSPs. We're able to really position the department to take the high ground against not against the CSPs, but with the CSPs. And by doing so, we're able to work through any issues quickly. And through that, it's been able to be very effective so far. Over the last 6 months, we've been able to push initiatives for the department, and no other contract vehicle in the Department of Defense from a cloud perspective has that ability besides JWCC.
What do you think you did right, the team did right, to get to that point, Ryan? Because everybody knows the trajectory, the path that went from JEDI to what we have today.
I think a multi-cloud effort was just the natural progression. Obviously JEDI was a lot of lessons learned, but JEDI was a place in time. JEDI was a place that we learned from previous vehicles that the IC community had, but it wasn't a failure or anything it was just a place where we were in the department at a place in time. I think what JEDI did was we learned from where we were, we got to where we are. Multi-cloud was a natural step in a progression. From a multi-cloud perspective, what their program is focused on is how we can use the 4 CSPs to launch the department moving forward. And then to your third P, the partnership. JWCC you can't be successful without partnership. JWCC is built on partnerships. Partnerships with internal to the department, partnerships with the IC. Our joint use agreement with the intelligence community is exactly how we move forward with not just the contract, but also accelerating the department from a Title 10 with the support with the Title 50. Our partnerships with the CSPs, just in general. Our cloud service providers are my greatest partner in this endeavor, not just from a contractual perspective, but how we actually get things done. And then also from our partnerships external with our allied partners. There's a lot of information sharing from what they're trying to do, and then also learning from what we're doing in a multi-cloud effort.
Ryan McArthur, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, sir.
You can read more about everything I talked about with Ryan at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, a 3-step plan to technology hyperconvergence. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the Fed Gov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back to JWCC. Ryan McArthur just discussed will enable missions all across the Department of Defense. Some of those missions, like CJADC2, will include allies and partners. Justin Shirk's Managing Director for Cloud and Secure Mission Lead at Accenture Federal Services. Welcome, Justin. Thanks for joining me today. Ryan talked about the cloud mission at DISA through the JWCC. How does that intersect with this concept of hyperconvergence that you're writing about?
Well, JWCC really enables that hyperconvergence at a basic level. You have to get applications and data in the cloud, and JWCC really enables that for the broader Department of Defense. So it's really an exciting enabler for that concept.
So there are 3 pieces of this hyperconvergence concept. The first one you write about is existing in the cloud. Is that as simple and self-evident as it sounds, Justin?
It is. It is. I mean, obviously you want to optimize your experience and in existence, but yes, it's simply just getting your data and apps and services in the cloud.
Where do organizations, where do agencies usually go wrong when they try that piece of this?
Oh my. Well, there's a lot that can go wrong. Lift and shift is sort of an outdated concept. We really want to modernize applications as we bring them to the cloud, right? Not just cart them off, but actually rethink how we build applications when we put them in the cloud.
Are organizations getting better at rethinking their business processes as they're doing that modernization? Or is that still kind of a sticking point sometimes?
No, it's definitely part of it, and we would really like to focus on the human side of cloud as well in terms of business process reengineering. So when you go into the cloud, it's a different experience than a thick client or a local client. You really want to understand what you're getting into in terms of the human experience.
Is it the difference in the human experience for the people who are deploying the application, or for the people who it serves, or is it a combination of both? Like, I'm thinking internal versus external.
It's a combination of both, right? So you need to upskill or reskill a lot of your system admins or engineers that were out there deploying, on-premise hardware to get them in the cloud. Obviously, there's cloud certifications and whatnot, but it's a different mindset, right? Virtualized infrastructure.
All right, the second piece of hyperconvergence that you write about is accessing information in the cloud. Is that also as self-evident as it sounds, or is there maybe another layer to it than that?
Well, maybe I should have written securely as a
okay,
to that one, because while you can put data in the cloud, making it available in a secure manner is really the crux of the challenge. And so, the cloud service providers do a great job of giving the tools, but configuring it in the appropriate secure way is really important.
Where's usually the stumbling block in that area?
Well, it's we all live in a multi-domain world and a multi-CSP world, and being able to interact with all those different identity providers and user accounts, you have that same challenge in your home email and accounts today. And so, figuring that out at the federal level is a gargantuan experience.
Quick sidebar, because everybody that I talk to now, all the thought leaders like yourself, refer to multi-cloud environment. That wasn't the case 5 years ago, and I'm wondering maybe we should start calling it the clouds instead of the cloud, but maybe that's too ethereal, right?
Yeah, well, it really is the reality today. I mean, people are using workspaces, collaboration, M365, and it's really a best-of-breed approach we see a lot of our customers moving to, whether it's a service or an application in the cloud. So it's really just ubiquitous.
All right, the last piece of hyperconvergence you're writing about is applying machine learning and generative AI in the cloud. This one's pretty new because I don't think 2 or 3 years ago anybody was really talking about generative AI, especially to the degree that we are today. Is that fair to say, do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, just in the past 18 months has really come on the scene. I mean, there was a lot of machine learning going on in the IC and the DoD as well, but it's really gained prominence. And when you have that, when you have the data in the cloud, you have those services in the cloud, then you can do really large language models, really large generative AI activities and tasks and machine learning generally on that data. And that's really how you enable massive insight.
Justin, 30 seconds left. What should an organization do to really maximize its potential when it gets started on this journey?
Have a plan and really think about how you work with your staff, right? Not just your users, but really think about the human side of cloud and how you can really drive towards innovation internally inside your cloud center of excellence and make sure that everyone is engaged from a skilling perspective.
Justin Shirk, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you.
You can find a link to Justin's piece about hyperconvergence at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the Zero Trust path for Homeland Security. The DHS CISO Ken Bibles here when Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the Fed Gov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back. The Department of Homeland Security is working toward the deadlines the administration laid out in its Zero Trust strategy for agencies. DHS headquarters has a role in the Zero Trust journey its components are taking too. Ken Bibles, the Chief Information Security Officer at the Department of Homeland Security. Ken, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Where is Zero Trust at DHS today?
So it's moving along. So we have the implementation plan that was delivered for OMB back as a response to M2209. I would say that in addition to that, we've been moving out on National Security Memorandum 8, which takes the same principles from the executive order and applies them to national security systems. So a lot of work going on that has been going on related to the fundamental networking aspects of Zero Trust, but importantly, starting to look at the other pillars within the Zero Trust architecture. Importantly, establishing an ICAM Executive Steering Committee, which is really an important aspect of bringing all the components in to think about identity credentialing and access management, which to me is one of the foundational pillars of Zero Trust. And then talking with and working with the Chief Data Officer to build in the right structures around how do we tag data appropriately and manage data associated with Zero Trust, as well as talking with the application and system owners, because they have a role in this as well. They've got to consume those other services to make Zero Trust come together. So a lot of foundational work that has been done is now being extended. Really pleased that I've been able to bring the department CISOs in a leadership role through my CISO Council so that they all have a voice. They're helping us plan. We're making the decisions about what needs to be done as an enterprise level thing, and then how can we give the flexibility to the different components to do other aspects of Zero Trust architecture to support in the best way their mission.
You've got such a diverse group of missions in those components. How does that manifest itself in what those CISOs tell you in those CISO council meetings about what they need and how they're going about executing Zero Trust?
Yeah, I think so. In terms of the application space, it's all over the place. There's a lot of different missions that need to be supported. Certainly what Customs and Border Protection needs in terms of the data analysis and such they do on the trade, with our trade partners is very different than what, say, Secret Service does in terms of protecting the president. And so you have all that range in between. But I think think that fundamentally, as cybersecurity professionals, that CISO Council is very much aware of what that architecture and Zero Trust means, how transformational it could be to the department. And it echoes what CIO Hyson actually testified to the Senate. You know, this idea of a monolithic Big Bang development has kind of gone by the wayside, and we're taking a much more agile approach as we modernize systems. So it's become very important for us to think about, well, what does this Zero Trust architecture mean as we modernize?
You listed a couple of organizations there, and I'm thinking of a couple others that have very high-profile cyber missions within the Department of Homeland Security. You mentioned Secret Service, and I don't think a lot of people know that they have a very important cyber mission within their organization.
Sure.
The Coast Guard is a military organization housed within DHS. Their cyber operation is very sophisticated. How does that show through in the way that you work with all of those organizations to kind of coordinate what they're all doing so that people aren't duplicating efforts?
Yeah, so I think that comes into the way in which we discuss these initiatives. The CISO Council is my forum for bringing every one of those representatives, including Coast Guard, including our intelligence analysis, including all of those components. And we will have those crucial conversations about how the activities of the department impact upon the component. There's some elements of it that it's going to make sense for them to do things more independently than others. But fundamentally, as part of this journey of Zero Trust, is that there are things that can be done in a common way and should be done in a common way. For example, CIO Hyson has been very much in accord on moving the CIOs towards leveraging things like login.gov for external identity. Very simple, but kind of hard to do depending on what your mission is. And so in some ways, it gives us the impetus to negotiate with the service provider for what we need in order to support all those missions of the department. So it's a very dynamic environment. It's been a lot of fun to be part of that, to have a dynamic leader like CIO Hyson who has a clear vision of what he wants to get accomplished, and in my role as a senior executive to help drive that direction.
So this question is more philosophical than tactical, Ken. When something is a journey, like Zero Trust, everybody calls it that, how does one measure success on that journey when you're not reaching a particular destination at some point?
I'm going to go back to something else that we've been working on. So back after SolarWinds, we realized that we needed to be able to have a tool to be able to look at how our cybersecurity investments were actually moving the needle. Same way with Zero Trust. How do you understand that an investment in a particular area has moved the needle? We called that a unified cybersecurity maturity model, and maturity was a surrogate for risk. But basically, at a program level, we're able to go look at the maturity of that program against different criteria, which will include Zero Trust principles. So we're able to then prioritize the investments these programs are making in their modernization to move them along the journey. So we'll be able to see the maturity of the organization increase as those investments play out in individual programs.
That's a pretty interesting way to look at that. How do you read that data? How do you see that data come through and interpret it to understand what you want to understand?
Sure. So we actually use our GRC tool that we, our governance repository for the data associated with programs in order to capture the metrics of each of the programs. And then that is played out in a dashboard that the CISOs can use in having a conversation with their CIOs about where they should prioritize investments. It also plays into our ability to look at when a program can't meet the mark and wants to get a waiver or needs to have some additional time. We can look at that and see if there are accumulations within a given program for waivers, and we can look at that and pay additional attention to it to move them along. So it plays out in terms of our ability to see ourselves better in a dashboard that we can hold people accountable to. And we have transparency for the CISOs and the conversation with the CIOs, and the programs can see themselves as well. So there's no surprises in this process.
You and your fellow CISOs within DHS have an advantage maybe over CISOs at other organizations in that you have the cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency in-house. Right. They're your fellow DHS partners. Does that give you any kind of leg up? What's that relationship like? I know you're going to say collaborative, but...
Well, it is, and I'll tell you that it goes two ways. The way I like to describe it is, as the CISO for the department, I set policy for the department. That includes CISO. But if there is an incident, CISA is the National Asset Response Manager, and I look at them and say, how do we want to tackle this, right? So, but in terms of how CISA proceeds to go build out programs, I look at myself as the person that can take on the early adopter. I can be the person that helps them think through, see how it's going to affect the rest of the federal government, help them refine their program before it's offered out to the rest of the federal government. That's my view of the relationship.
Another philosophical question: how is the threat landscape changing? People try to tackle this all the time, and there are some blocks that people talk about. Malware's one, and ransomware, and so on. But overall, in a 30,000 foot level.
Yeah, I would probably bucket in a couple different areas. Certainly, ransomware remains a concern. Certainly, in the general public, that's a bigger concern, and with corporate networks and critical infrastructure providers, as we've seen some major incidents play out. But I think that inside of the federal agencies, one of the bigger areas of concern is not only the evolution of software supply chain vulnerability. So we saw that with SolarWinds, a very innovative actor who was able to actually corrupt the delivery pipeline of a critical piece of software. So that triggered us to look very closely at that, and you saw that play out in some of the OMB memos, M2218 in particular, talking about using secure software development practices up front. Another area that I think is emerging, and it probably plays at one of the harder areas, is this area of generative AI. And the ability to generate very realistic phishing attempts, whether it's phishing, smishing, vishing, name your poison. And I think that that's an area that's emerging, and so that becomes an area of how do we provide the awareness? How do we train the workforce to be aware of those things so that we reduce that threat? But those are the kind of the major areas. Certainly, supply chain is continuing to be a growing concern, just because the adversary is getting better and better at learning how to go attack a supply chain, and this whole idea of generative AI just being used for malign purposes.
Ken Bible, it's great to talk to you again. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Francis. Appreciate it.
You can read more about Zero Trust at DHS at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose is back in a moment. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the Fed Gov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, the GovForward FedRAMP Headliner Summit's coming August 23rd at the Waldorf Astoria in D.C. Speakers from GSA, Capitol Hill, and industry will teach you what's new and what's next in securing the cloud in the federal government. I will be your MC for the day. You can read more about the event and register at govforward.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. The Air Force's Chief Experience Officer, Cole Whittle, and Nathan Sanfilippo of the VA's Office of Veteran Experience will be here. Hope you will be too. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.